how Ten Hag's inverted pyramid allowed United to control possession against West Ham's 4-4-2, who were the standout performers for United in this game, and why United's crosses from the half space are more effective than their crosses from out wide. All of that will be coming up in this video, but before I get into that, are you from the UK or Ireland and want to watch live Italian Serie A football every weekend? Well, with the OneFootball app you can, as they show one live Serie A game each weekend. This weekend it's Milan versus Spezia, which will be free to watch on the OneFootball app at 7:45 this Saturday, and you can also use the app to look at highlights, stats, transfer news, and the other results from all around Europe, so it really is a one-stop shop for football. Downloading the app will be helping to support the channel, so you can find it linked in the description below. So going into the game, we saw David Moyes set up West Ham in a narrow 4-4-2 shape out of possession in United's defensive third. Now, unlike sides like City, Arsenal, Brentford and Chelsea, West Ham were content to hold high positions in United's build-up phase, but not necessarily press aggressively, choosing to keep their wide players tucked in alongside the central midfielder, retaining a horizontal compactness, whilst Downs and Scamacca played as the front two out of possession, looking to screen Casemiro in behind them, stopping the centre-backs being able to split them with a pass into the Brazilian. And so we would see one of Scamacca and Downs drop onto Casemiro when the ball got shifted wide, showing us that Moyes was more concerned about stopping players finding space between the lines, rather than necessarily winning the ball back high up the pitch. Now, United used their usual 2-3-2-3 shape in possession, with the fullbacks pulling out wide and Casemiro as the single pivot, as Ten Hag continued with that staggered midfield of Eriksen floating in behind and in front of Rice and Souček, and pulling further out to the left, whilst Fernandes would initially retain a higher position on the right before eventually moving into a more central position between the lines. We did see Casemiro dropping in front of Downs and Scamacca, creating a temporary back three at times, with Eriksen dropping into the single pivot position, which gave United a wider base to circulate the ball around West Ham's front two, either forcing the front two to stretch and become wider, or one of the wide midfielders to push up alongside the front two to sustain the press, but in doing so this would leave space in behind them for Dalot and Shaw. However, if they opted to hold their positions alongside the fullbacks, this would then allow Maguire and Martinez space to carry the ball wide of the front two, which was what West Ham went with in the end. Whilst we did see West Ham attempt to trigger press on occasion, with a pass back to the fullbacks or centre-backs being used as a signal for Bowen on the right or Benrahma on the left to initiate the press, with Downs and Scamacca then being prepared to move to close down the United centre-backs a lot more aggressively. However, whilst West Ham's front four seemed to be prepared to press high, the system as a whole was more predicated on retaining a zonal shape, rather than pressing man-to-man, and so certainly in the first half, United didn't find it that hard to play out of their defensive third. In the middle third, West Ham would then drop off into two banks of four, with Scamacca and Downs screening in front, and United looked to take advantage of this defensive shape through their positioning of their fullbacks. See, when United have been able to progress the ball out of their defensive third, we see that their 2-3-2-3 shape shifts to a 2-3-4-1 shape, which is a shape that we have seen a lot of top sides use around the continent this season. Now, in this game we did see a lot of positional fluidity from United between the players on United's flanks. However, the 2-3-4-1 inverted pyramid shape, which could also be considered more of a 2-3-5, remained consistent, with players being able to drop in two or three different positions. Sometimes Christian Eriksen would pull wide, taking up a wide left deep position alongside Casemiro, with Luke Shaw taking this as an opportunity to overlap down the flank, then allowing Marcus Rashford to drift infield between the lines. Although we did also see Luke Shaw positioned next to Casemiro on occasion, with Eriksen then sitting between the lines and Rashford holding the width on the left flank, and similar to what we've seen from Liverpool over the past half decade or so on their right flank, on Ten Hag's left flank he was able to use a triangle with Shaw, Eriksen and Rashford, all capable of switching positions when the space is there. On the right, Diego Dalot most of the time would take up a narrow and fairly deep position alongside Casemiro, though when the ball moved out to the left side we would see him push up and not just move in between the lines, but also make central runs ahead of Ronaldo, trying to get in behind the back line. Now, whilst we did see Dalot overlapping Elanga, allowing United's right winger to move infield into a narrower position, he didn't do this as much as Luke Shaw did on the left side, and instead would retain that narrower position. See, it's all about passing lanes. When the ball gets switched across the back line from the left to the right, Dalot can do two things. Either he can retain that narrow position, which can be done as a way of pinning West Ham's left-sided midfield and narrow, opening up the passing lane from Maguire out to Elanga on the right, which would then enable Elanga to isolate the fullback in a 1v1. Or Dalot can do what he did the majority of the time, which was pull out wide, looking to stretch West Ham's defensive shape and either open up a passing lane for Maguire to thread a pass into him down the flank, or at least drag Benrahma Benrahma into a wider position, opening up space between him and Rice on his inside, creating a gap for Maguire to then try and play a pass to get Fernandes or Elanga in behind the West Ham midfield in the half space. Now this was the right approach from Ten Hag's side, and so that's why we did see United dominate the play early on in the first half and up until around maybe the 60th minute. United's inverted pyramid in that 2-3-5 shape was perfect for using positional pinning against this West Ham side, with one of the United players constantly holding a wide position on the flank, as well as a player dropping into what I like to refer to as the quarterback position wide of Casemiro, with a third completing the triangle by sitting in the half space. The wide midfielder in West Ham's midfield 4 was reluctant to move out to Dalot or Eriksen in those quarterback positions, as this would open up space in behind them for players like Fernandes and Rashford to drop into, and so with this option always open wide of Casemiro, it was fairly simple for United to work the ball past Scamacca and Downs, and once here, because West Ham's wide midfielders remained narrow, the majority of United's attacks were forced to be funneled down the flanks, and so it's no surprise that this is where they created their best chances. First, it was Diego Dalot who created a half-decent headed opportunity for Rashford. As you can see here, the ball is on the left side in the West Ham half, and Dalot is positioned almost as a central attacking midfielder, positioned between the lines, and it's Elanga who is the width provider on the right flank. And when the ball gets switched out to him, he's able to move the ball back inside to Dalot, who because of his original inverted position is now receiving the ball in a much narrower position, and has to provide a more vertical cross as opposed to a horizontal cross when out wide. Dalot's cross for Rashford creates a decent opportunity, but was quite a low value XG scoring position. However, later on in the first half, we did see Christian Eriksen able to play an exquisite cross from this same narrow position, which combined with Rashford's anticipation, power and heading ability, saw the ball thunder past Fabianski, giving Rashford a very Ronaldo-esque goal. But with United's fullbacks joining the attack in a much more narrower position than conventional for fullbacks, we were going to see both Dalot and Shaw receiving the ball in what I like to call the optimal vertical crossing position, which pretty much is what it says. And it is from these type of positions where Kevin De Bruyne, Trent Alexander-Arnold and João Cancelo have become so threatening from over the past few seasons. And there are a few reasons why crossing in these half space positions for most sides are going to be significantly more effective, creating higher value chances and crosses from wider positions, as traditional overlapping fullbacks would make more often. In this half space crossing position, because the cross is coming from a more vertical angle than a cross further wide, the attacker who meets a cross with his head doesn't have to put as much power and direction into the header as he would if the ball was coming from a more horizontal angle. A flicked header from this half space cross already has the pace on the ball going in the direction of the goal, and so if you have players who have good movement in behind the back line but not necessarily outstanding in aerial duels, these types of crosses can be a lot more effective than from traditional wider positions. From wider positions, the cross has to be a lot better to really give the attacker any sort of chance of getting the header on target. But the attacker needs to have not just fantastic heading direction, as he's having to completely redirect the ball, but he also needs the power in his neck and jump combined with the timing. So all in all, the reason I think these half space crosses would be a lot more effective for Manchester United as they were in this game, and as a weapon going forward that they should use more often, is because just in general, I think for most sides, these crosses create much better opportunities, and are a lot harder for the opposition defenders to defend against. Towards the end of the second half, when West Ham were rather dominating the play, they also seemed to be going the crossing route, creating a number of good opportunities which forced David De Gea into a standout performance with a number of fantastic saves that he made later on. In the first half, however, it seemed like West Ham were going to have most of their joy when they countered quickly, transitioning the attack with pace and utilising the narrow defensive positions of Bowen and Benrahma, having the ball funneled into these two to then drive the attack forward into the final third. West Ham's best avenue of doing this was to win the ball back in their own half and then instantly after the turnover, look for a vertical pass into Scamacca's feet, who would play as a striker with his back to goal, and then from here Bowen and Benrahma can make those forward runs ahead of Scamacca, looking to receive the ball and then isolate the centre backs in 1v1s. However, whilst West Ham were able to create some glimmers of decent attacks from these types of situations, most of the time they were unable to link the play through the front two. This was firstly because Finn Downs just isn't a forward or even a central attacking midfielder, and so it was always going to offer something more limited in the attack, and secondly, United were very good, fantastic even, at stopping West Ham's counter before it even had a chance of moving forward, either with Casemiro and the midfield winning the ball back in the centre of the pitch, or Lisandro Martinez at the back being front foot and assertive and aggressive with his defending, being strong and patient with his standing battles against Scamacca, and timing his forceful sliding tackles expertly throughout the whole game, whilst also being positionally excellent, particularly from crosses, where unlike a a lot of defenders, Martinez gets his body positioning perfect, able to see the movement of the ball and of the player behind him, and so is inch perfect and able to cut out the cross. Diego Dalot was also exceptional from crossing situations. On the Sky Sports commentary, Gary Neville had big praise for Dalot's defending at the back post from a number of crosses that came from United's left, with the Portuguese right back like Martinez having the awareness to track the run of the attacker behind him, but also be able to position himself in the right zonal area in the box to make the headed interception if the cross does in fact go deep into Dalot's area. I counted at least 2 of these aerial interceptions that were basically game-saving headers, as particularly with players like Antonio and Souček in the box at the time, having players who are positionally diligent and able to win these aerial duels is invaluable, especially when the opposition side are throwing crosses into the box, as West Ham were doing towards the end of the game. However, in this game we did see one of United's weaknesses, which I feel is their squad depth off the bench. As the game went on, United weren't controlling possession as they were in the first half, and West Ham grew into the game, and when they had the ball in the middle third, because United's wide midfielders were positioned high up the pitch alongside Fernandes in that narrow 4-2-3-1, looking to initiate an aggressive press when possible, this left space either side of Casemiro and Eriksen for the 2 West Ham wide attackers Ben Rama and Bowen to drift infield into and look to pick up the ball in. In order to try to combat this, we did see Ten Hag do what he has done in recent games, which is bring on both McTominay and Fred and shift Fernandes and Eriksen out of that central position and have 3 combative players in the centre of midfield. Now, whilst this does give United more athleticism and defensive capabilities without the ball, with both McTominay and Fred now in the centre of midfield, United struggled to either keep possession or transition the attack with fluidity, with a lot of United's plays breaking down, handing the ball back to West Ham and allowing them to sustain pressure, pushing United back into their own box and creating some troubling chances for United via their deep crosses into the box. And in all honesty, if it wasn't for the athletic saves of David De Gea, who made a world-class save from Zuma, as well as the positioning and reading of the game of both Dalot and Martinez, then this could have easily been one of those games that United draw with a late goal conceded and 2 points dropped, as we've seen a number of times in the last 2 to 3 seasons. But overall, it was the defensive side of the game that won United the match. Rashford scored the goal and was very good once again. I do still feel like Ronaldo is more suited to having a player alongside him who can be the player to drop off and link the attack, rather than him having to be that player that drops off. But at the moment, that's what the system needs from the striker, and Ronaldo did a reasonable yet still not outstanding job of playing this role. But I do still think, however, as long as he's still at United unless Martial is fit, then Ronaldo should be the starting striker for Ten Hag's side. Martinez, Dalot and De Gea were the standout players, with Martinez and Dalot being very good in possession as well as from defensive situations, with Martinez's incisive forward passing from deep and Dalot's crossing into the box being exactly what United have missed against these type of sides who sit in deep defensive blocks like West Ham did. And as I've said before, this was a type of game where United under Rangnick or Solskjaer before probably would have dropped points. Nevertheless, United did deserve the victory in the end, recording an XG of 1.75 to West Ham's 1.00, even if it wasn't the most convincing of performances. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you do get notified when my videos come out. Check the description for more videos and put your thoughts in the comment section as well.